If you know anything about animation, you may have seen this man. This is Howl Pendragon, the titular character of the film Howl's Moving Castle. But this is Howl Jenkins, and he came first. So what's going on here? Well, if you know anything about Howl's Moving Castle, you may be aware of this book. This is, well, Howl's Moving Castle. Written by Diana Wynne Jones in 1986. It would later be adapted into a film in 2004. When I first heard of it, I wasn't all that interested, but then I started seeing these posts by Miko.jpg on Instagram, animating small scenes from the novel. I ended up deciding to read it for myself, and as it turns out, while core elements may have transferred over, these are two very different stories. So this is Howl, the smooth, confident, mysterious wizard who literally sweeps Sophie off of her feet. And this is the tax-evading drama queen responsibility-avoiding man-child that he came from. Howl's Moving Castle, both editions, follows Sophie Hatter, a girl who lives in a hat shop. In the book, her situation is expanded upon slightly. As the eldest of three sisters, Sophie believes that this inherited hat shop will be her life forever. Her other sisters have much more in the way of opportunity than her, so she makes hats day in and day out. Often, she'll talk to the hats while she's working. Recently, the shop has been gaining some popularity because it seems that anyone who wears Sophie's hats have a good fortune coming for them. This causes an influx of customers, which means more work for Sophie. Sophie in the book is very well set up by these scenes. She is probably the most similar character across both versions. She's no nonsense and highly values hard work, but fundamentally does not believe in herself and her own abilities. She feels she is destined to have bad luck and would fail at anything else she tries, reinforced by the folklore of Ingery, the place she comes from, and what it says about eldest of three sisters. She looks for reasons that trying new things would backfire, because she is afraid that she is some way fundamentally unworthy of success. She is taken advantage of by her stepmother, not being paid correctly for her work, and seemingly assigned the hat shop because, well, someone has to do it. In the books, we see the reasoning for a movie scene, Sophie visiting her sister Letty in the bakery. It's told to the reader that, despite the fact it has been some time since her sisters were sent to find their fortunes, Sophie has not visited her sister in this bakery, presumably because of a mixture of not wanting her sister to see her in such a rut, and because she knows Letty has been seeing success in the bakery, and she's a little envious of that. But like this is not Howl, this is not even Letty Hatter. The subplot of Sophie's sisters was taken out of the movie so you'd never know it, but this is actually her sister Martha using a potion to look like Letty. Neither of them cared for the places they were being sent to find their fortunes, so they just decided to switch. Just like that. They didn't like their supposed destiny, so they found a different path. This is a complete contrast to Sophie's worldview. Instead of wallowing in their disappointment, they immediately did something about it. This is for the reader's sake, to tell us that maybe the laws of this world aren't exactly what Sophie thinks they are. Sophie as a character is quite stubborn and dedicated to hard work, but she's also almost defeatist. Sophie is very much a rule follower, even if she hates those rules. Later on, we see it with her curse. She's stuck like that because she thinks she is, and when she thinks she's stuck with something, like the hat shop, she makes it a part of her instead of trying to change her situation. But before I get too into that, there's someone I just glossed over. Already, the differences between the two pieces of media were getting pretty obvious to me. It was really interesting and I wanted to talk about it, which is why we're here today, but Howl was the main core of what was fascinating about this split to me. So let's examine both versions and see what we can find out about him. In between Sophie going to see Letty, something very important happens. The scene where Sophie and Howl first meet. It's probably the most popular image of the movie. He shows up while she's getting harassed by some soldiers and gets her out of there, until they're chased by the wicked minions of the Witch of the Waste. It's a big, dramatic moment setting up this mysterious wizard and the dangers of this world. In the movie, this scene is implied to be why she's even cursed at all, association to Howl turning the witch's eyes to her. In the book, he looks like a lunatic while he flirts with her in the streets, and she avoids that and goes to visit her sister instead. See, the reason the witch curses her at all in the book is because of those lucky hats I mentioned before. Unbeknownst to Sophie, when she talks to her hats, she imbues them with magical intention. She's doing magic, quite powerful magic in fact. The witch sees her as competition. The Sophie of the movie isn't explored much within the bounds of her magic, but in the book she does magic all the time. I assume living with Howl does that to you. But whichever way, she ends up cursed to be an old woman by the Witch of the Waste, which is the moment she decides she is no longer going to live like this. She has nothing more to lose after all, so she sets off to find a fortune of some sort, eventually ending up at Howl's castle. This is where we meet the final of our main characters, Michael, or Markle, depending on the version. This is one of the bigger character changes. They are both Howl's apprentice, orphans he just kinda kept. While where Markle came from is never really elaborated on, Michael later tells Sophie that he's here because he was a homeless orphan on the streets that Howl took in to get some food, and then he lived there for several months before Howl noticed and made him a bedroom. In the books he's a little older, and sort of the only reason this house functions at all. Michael routinely hides money from Howl because Howl loves buying new fancy suits and human skulls and literally nothing that they need to make the household run. It's pretty clear that Michael and Calcifer are the ones that really keep this house afloat, constantly chasing the tornado that is Howl around. Michael's even the reason he has such a horrible reputation in the first place. In both the film and movie, the rumor goes around that the wizard Howl eats the hearts of pretty young women. This seems like just a rumor in the film, something any scary mystery would naturally generate. The book tells us this was actually Michael, under Howl's instructions to blacken his name and start a rumor about something absurd so he wouldn't be bothered. I wonder if Markle is also the reason for that rumor in the films? It is infinitely funnier to me to imagine this child walking up to random adults and telling them there's a heart-eating wizard on the border of town. Please let that be the case. In both pieces of media, Sophie ends up staying at Howl's castle by making a deal with Calcifer to help him end his pact with Howl in exchange for breaking her curse, which she cannot directly tell anyone about. She decides to stay under the cover of being their new cleaning lady. She makes up her mind by herself in the movie, sort of just barging in and deciding that will be that. In the book, she's a little more skeptical, but Calcifer says she must be here for at least a month for him to learn about her curse. When asked what excuse she could possibly have for randomly deciding to live in a stranger's house, Calcifer tells her that they'll think of one, because, quote, Howl's pretty useless at most things. Damn, Calcifer! Coming in hot! Now, the movie Howl had his first moment earlier and left a much bigger first impression, but this is when they formally meet. He's quite unfazed by the random old woman in his house, accepting Sophie's explanation for why she's there with little pushback and making breakfast calmly. He really has a mysterious aura about him, seeming sort of otherworldly. In the book, Howl is described as a tall young fellow in a blue and silver suit, with fair hair and curious glass-green eyes. The beats of the interaction are similar, and Sophie's general impression of him is that, quote, he is not only hard to pin down, but seems to dislike answering any questions at all. This will become a theme with him. The Howl in the book is extremely self-absorbed. We learned he is pursuing a woman, which is apparently a pattern with him, as he will fixate on getting a girl's attentions for weeks at a time, and then abandon ship as he, quote, hates to be pinned down to anything. He doesn't even notice that his house is clean for 3 days until the girl he is after begins to thaw to him. His mess is apparently because he knows exactly where everything is, and this is where they begin to butt heads. Sophie is a headstrong, determined woman, and Howl basically has to beat her away from cleaning his room with a broom. Their dynamic in the book delights me, because Howl really is an impossible lunatic of a free spirit, and Sophie both wants to pick him up and shake him and help him at the same time. Sophie accuses him of not liking anything unpleasant at all, calling him a slitherer outer. Howl calls her a horribly nosy old woman, but they coexist, at least for a time. Well, up until...
Sophie! You sabotaged me!
The slime scene in the Howl's Moving Castle film is where you start to see Howl's personality beyond the face he puts on, where the mysterious veneer cracks. Sophie, while cleaning, moves Howl's potions around, and Howl, extremely vain and used to his esoteric organization system, accidentally fries his hair bright orange, therefore becoming a ginger and losing his will to go on. He loses his mind on her, finding no point if he cannot be beautiful, harsh, and summons a giant pile of depression slime into the house until Sophie and Markle manage to rally and shove him into a bathtub to hose him into stopping his tantrum. It's an important moment for Sophie in the film, letting her show her insecurity about herself. She claims she has never been beautiful a day in her life. To which I say, hey, look at her! Look at her. But in all seriousness, Sophie's character has this core of insecurity about her that her no-nonsense attitude protects her from in a way. This is the freedom of being an old woman to her, to no longer have worries of wasting a life that happened without her, or to keep up her beauty. Like I said, she has nothing left to lose. But that doesn't mean those things don't haunt her. And watching an absolutely gorgeous man who lives in a castle and is a renowned wizard decide to give up on life because of a bad hair day gets to her something awful. She had her life taken from her, and he is reacting more emotionally than she did after aging like 60 years in one go to being ginger. In the book, this tantrum is also what secures her position in the house. At the start, she was worried about butting heads with Howl, concerned he'd kick her out. This incident completely strips his mystique to her. In the book, the tantrum's core is really because the girl he is pursuing has found another man, not just the hair. He complains about this to Sophie, which garners one of my favorite quotes from the entire book. Sophie's sympathies shrank quite sharply. It occurred to her that if he could cover himself in green slime, he could just as easily turn his hair the proper color. The book version of Howl is a very interesting character to me. The film shows shades of his personality, but hearing it right from the Sophie's mouth creates one of the most entertaining characters I've ever read about. He is an absolute disaster of a man. Like Sophie said, he is a slitherer outer. He avoids unpleasantness and responsibility to near extreme degrees. Something we see very often through the book is his pursuit of women. The idea that he eats hearts isn't totally just a rumor spread by Michael. It's a metaphor for what he does to those women. Howl has a hole in his heart because he does not have one. He sold it for magic. And so he constantly is looking for some novel thing to fill the pit, abandoning his own responsibilities and relationships in that pursuit. To stay in Howl's life, you essentially need to not have any expectations of him. And so in relationships, he pursues women strongly to see if the love that they give will finally be the thing to fill the pit inside him. And when it doesn't, he moves on without doing any of the work that might have made that love real. You can see this mindset even in his smaller details. The way he constantly purchases new trinkets and outfits, or how he gets others to blacken his reputation in an attempt to avoid deeper responsibility. Howl seeks short bursts of excitement and dopamine, and will ruin his reputation on purpose to avoid anything but. In both media, there's a scene that illustrates this, one to a bit higher stakes than the other. The chapter in the book is titled, "In which Sophie pretends to be Howl's old mother." In the film, he is called by a previous mentor of his to the castle. It's an attempt to get him involved in the war that's currently going on. And really, it's reasonable. He doesn't want to do this whatsoever. In the book, Sophie sees the king directly, with the end goal instead being to find the missing prince and kill the Witch of the Waste, who Howl is avoiding because she is his ex-girlfriend. In both instances, Sophie is here to make Howl seem as useless and unreliable as possible, so he won't be dragged into doing these things. This is a high-stakes version, yes. Avoiding war or getting dragged into a duel with your ex are things you'd reasonably want to avoid. But he puts others in front of him to shield him from even having to turn these things down in person. Something fascinating about Book Howl is how, even in Ingery, Land of Magic, he feels fundamentally out of step with the narrative. Not in a bad way, but throughout the narrative, there were little things about him that felt off that I couldn't place. Until the book comes out and tells you why. He's not from Ingery at all. He's Welsh. Yeah, Howl's an isekai protagonist. Instead of the forbidden color in the door leading to a battlefield like in the film, in the book, he just made it look very scary so Michael wouldn't do anything stupid like go through it and end up in Wales. Howl is, in reality, not even named Howl. That was just an assumption Sophie made from her Ingery perspective of name conventions. Instead of Howl Pendragon, his name is Howl Jenkins, spelled like this. You can tell because Howl's sister, yes he has one of those, who knows nothing about his magic and just thinks he's a layabout doing odd jobs, will say his name correctly in spoken dialogue. He's actually a PhD student who wrote his doctoral thesis in spells and charms, and has been running around between worlds and making computer games about his life for his nephew to play. Wales is a very important piece of Howl, and seeing the more human side of him in this narrative finally strips off his mystique and puts him and Sophie on the same level. Where at the beginning Sophie was trying to walk on eggshells around this strange wizard she didn't understand, Howl's a science nerd who likes to play rugby, loves his niece and nephew, and has a sister who worries about him. He is also a massively powerful wizard who sold his heart to a fire demon for magic and spends his days buying human skulls and fancy suits. Between the two pieces of media, Howl's character keeps many core traits but is distinctly different, and so how his character arc is handled also changes. The movie and the book end very differently, to the point I can't even make a direct scene-to-scene comparison because they don't line up anymore. Let's start with the movie. Studio Ghibli's work is well known to frequently focus on or feature war. During the course of the plot, we hear that wizards are being called to a war that broke out due to the disappearance of Prince Justin, who is shockingly barely spoken about. The first time I watched it, I didn't even know he existed until the Scarecrow just became him at the end. But if you look close enough, it is in the background. To fight in this war, Howl turns into this Birdman thing. As he changes more into this magical beast, it becomes harder and harder for him to return to humanity. Howl as a character is not a grounded person. That's not hard to say. In the book, this manifests as his attempts to fill the pit. In the film, it seems to be that magic itself has isolated him from others. Along with his responsibility phobia, he has trouble with people. Sophie needs to realize that she is beautiful and loved by someone. Howl needs someone to set him straight and keep his feet on the ground. Literally, he is a Birdman. The film culminates in Sophie returning Howl the heart he traded away. The war ends and they live happily ever after in his weird castle with their apprentice kid and the now freed Calcifer. In the book, she is instead kidnapped by the Witch of the Waste. Here, the witch is the central villain, and at this point they've had multiple encounters with her and her curses. Sophie believes she has taken Howl's, at the time, female fascination, an Earthwoman named Miss Angorian. In this version of the story, making deals with fire demons seems to be a common issue, because Angorian turns out to be one such demon, and she and the witch are fusing people together to try and create the ultimate human, by melding the prince and a different wizard's body. They want to complete it with Howl's head, because, I assume, he has the perfect face. Sophie is captured here to be used as bait. Howl's face and appearance are his greatest possessions. Michael told Sophie as much when she came to realize just how long he spends every morning getting himself ready to go see the women he's after. Michael tells her that the day Howl doesn't bother is the day Michael finally believes he's really in love. Well, upon hearing Sophie's been captured, he basically bursts through the wall a complete half-shaven mess. He's not trying to be the gorgeous prince saving the day. He lets her see him even when he isn't perfect. Ultimately, here too, he has returned his heart. Apparently, he knew Sophie was under a curse the whole time, but when he couldn't undo it, just assumed she liked it like that and moved on. Icon. So which version's better? I have no idea, that wasn't the point. I'd actually love to hear which version you prefer, if you've seen both. But this comparison wasn't meant to highlight a better version. I've probably said it before and will keep saying it. Adaptation is really hard. I would love to see a one-to-one adaptation of the book one day, but just because the Ghibli version is different to its source material does not make it a bad adaptation, because it very clearly has so much love and respect for the source material. When asked about the movie, Diana, the author, said, "I was surprised by Miyazaki's moving castle, because I had not thought of the castle having feet. In the book I wrote, the castle is more like a hovercraft and floats an inch or so above the ground, but I am very fond of Miyazaki's castle. I have several models of it around the house. As for Howl and Sophie, both of them are gentler and more noble than the characters in my books, but I wasn't surprised by this. Movies are always different. I have several models of Howl and Sophie around the house too, and quite a few Calcifers, one of which sits in the fireplace." And I loved that quote because she is totally right. The Howl and Sophie of the movie are not the often petty, dramatic, over-the-top characters of the books. The castle walks instead of floats. Michael is Markle and Calcifer is orange instead of green, and I think it's fantastic because you can see in every frame just how much care went into creating it. Adaptations get talked about a lot online because they can often go very, very wrong. In the worst offenders, it's just disrespect in the name of appealing to a modern audience. The Avatar The Last Airbender movies consistently getting the names of its own characters wrong, the Death Note movie changing Light's entire personality in a show that's just about his god complex, or the Uglies movie losing sight of the story it was trying to tell with inappropriate casting and visual direction. I think we can all agree those were failures. Now, I think it's ridiculous to say that a film or television adaptation has to be perfectly faithful. They aren't the same medium, and they shouldn't be treated as such. And this is one of those instances where both pieces are so delightful, I wanted to highlight them. So yeah, this is not Howl. And I think that's pretty great. That's a wrap for me. Don't forget to like and subscribe on your way out so I can see you again. And question of the day, do you have a favorite adaptation? Or just a particularly bad one for me? I love terrible movies. If you want to see me talk about one, the end card will take you to a video I made on the Attack on Titan live-action films. So until next time, thanks for watching, and good night.